the first question I have for you is, who are you, sir? Can you introduce yourself to the people?
Well, to your audience, my name is BillyTKO. If you guys do not know, I am a YouTuber. I talk about professional wrestling over on my YouTube channel. You guys can go find me. Again, that's BillyTKO. I've been talking about wrestling for only a couple months now, but previously I was known as Billy Davis, the music artist, which many people who are probably watching this, who I've sent this to, are people who know me for music, and I've changed since then. But yes, BillyTKO, man. BillyTKO. That's who I am.
Now, how does that kind of change occur? I mean, I imagine that's not a gradual... I imagine that's not a sudden shift. It's a gradual shift. So,
all right.
I imagine there's different events that happen over time that kind of led to something like that, right?
Yeah.
How do you leave the music? I can't imagine doing it myself.
No. So, it's kind of funny, right? So, to say that I left music would kind of be crazy to even think about. I don't know if I ever left music. I think it was more or less of me taking a break and then realizing that, hey, if I want to later on go back to a music career, I think I can. But to the question, a change like that happens with a lot of thought. So it came down to what do I want out of my life? What are my whys, right? And is music going to take me to my why? And at the end of the day, we can all play pretend and we could say, oh, well, I really want to be, I want to do this, right? And I believe it can take me to my goals. But, it doesn't need to happen instantly. Let's be real here. We live in a world that is based off instant gratification. Would you agree?
I would agree, sir.
The world that we live in is built off instant gratification. And yes, I'm one of those people who would love instant gratification. Now, do I get it? No. But I knew what was going to work better in my favor. And at this moment in time, YouTube works in my favor. So, talking about music, I was hitting a very broad audience, right? I think you know that music is very broad, right?
Oh, yeah. And you never know. I think that's one of the things that's like so hard to explain to people when they first start making music is how broad it really is. Like, you can't really target a specific thing for too long.
No.
Especially if you're a creative person.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? So when I had done the music thing, I was hitting this very big, broad audience. But this broad audience weren't all fans of me, if that makes any sense. So what do? Well, in that case, you have to buckle down and you have to find a niche, right? Having a niche audience is going to be the most important. So when I started doing music, it was for the love, it was for the passion. And I think you've had a lot of music artists on your channel, so I think you would know for 100% how that is so important and why it is so important to, do it for the love and you do it for the passion. But for how long can you, until you have to buckle down and be like, okay, well, I need to maybe try something new and not go away from it, but if I want to make this goal, right? And I think if you talk to a lot of those music artists, they'll tell you, you can't just be a music artist anymore. You can't, right?
No.
Content.
No, dude, because content is king. Like, the whole thing is like, even if, so what I've been doing for the last month or so is just taking a break from making content because I realized that we're in this day and age where, like, I know what I've been going through. Like, I have made so much content. And what for? Like, sometimes I think about it, like, and I'm sure that someday it'll build up to something, but it's just what it is. It's just what it is. And again, it's something that if someone just starting out making content and all this, just starting out being creative, it's so hard to explain to them, like, no, it's never ending. You're going to be doing this forever.
Yeah,
it never ends.
It's a constant cycle of how can I wake up and be better the next day? Right?
Yeah, and in a way, that's fun.
It is. As long as you have a creative mind, I think it's one of the most fun things that you could possibly do, right? If your mind is constantly flowing with ideas, get into this. It's for you. If it's not, stay away from it. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, I feel like where I was with music, it just became like this constant battle of it just got hard at some point, and I felt like the love and the passion wasn't there. But the reason why I started doing music was for love and passion, right? So when those things go away, it's hard to sit up and do something. It's like working at a job. You know what I mean? You're not working at a job because you love it. You're working at a job because you have to do it. And in that moment in time when I was doing music, it felt like I had to do it. And I never wanted that to be the case with music because I love and I respect the music business so much. And I've been through it all with music. I don't want to make a mockery of it, if that makes any sense. I don't, and I'm not even sitting here saying I'm some big name in the game, but I just love the idea of music. You know what I mean? And I never wanted to disrespect something that I cared about so much. So I take a step back, right? And I start covering hip-hop news. So my channel, my YouTube channel, right? When I started it, it started as me posting music videos. Then it turned into me doing all my audio engineering stuff. And I was doing how-to videos and stuff like that. People were learning, right? Well, then one random Sunday, and I want people to really listen. I'm sorry for just sitting here rambling on. One random Sunday, I decided I was going to make a video. And it wasn't going to be a how-to video. It was going to be a reaction video. So this one random Sunday, I decided I'm going to make this reaction video. At the time, have you ever heard of NF, maybe?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Okay. So I wake up one day and I do this reaction video. NF had just dropped his new song, Hope. And I was like, okay, I'm going to react to it. So I react to it, and I want people to know that this is how fast things can happen. In a mere, I want to say 45 minutes. You do YouTube, so you probably know. My video, it was ranking 1 out of 10, which if anybody who doesn't know YouTube, that is very good. The videos that rank 1 out of 10, that means they're ranking the highest. That means they're the best. Ranking 1 out of 10, and then you start to see a little bit of growth. Well, then suddenly, next day, it takes off. And this video ends up reaching 30, 40, 50,000 people, right? So then I become monetized.
Da-da-da.
And now YouTube becomes more than just this regular everyday thing. So now you start to take into account, well, is it YouTube that I want to do? Because now I'm starting to see this income, and I think you can agree with me. You probably know. These streaming services, they pay like dog shit. Spotify, they do. They pay like dog shit. So it's like you're putting all this money into music and you're doing all of these things, but you're not receiving anything out of it. And as artists and people of creative minds, they deserve to be, you deserve to have some kind of form of payment or whatever the case may be. Just some kind of gratification for the work that you've put in. Look at the work you're doing. Look at the work, maybe people that you've had on this podcast. John Connor. They've put in all that work. They deserve that to come back. And sorry for rambling on. I apologize. But yes, that is kind of the story on how we made the change.
Oh, well, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful moral to place at the end of the story, because I think that's one thing that I think bringing a bunch of different people on through a podcast or an interview series really does, is it encapsulates that human spirit and that will to change and want to embrace something and go after it. And I think that's what I love about making music, is that creative energy and that infinite creativity that you can find deep within. I think that's why I love professional wrestling, because I fell in love with professional wrestling at a young age.
Okay.
I right around, actually, I shouldn't say a young age because I'm lying. It was probably, for me, it's a relatively young age, but I'm talking like, I don't know, 12 years old. So I had a friend who had just moved to Michigan, and he had the Edge DVDs and all this good stuff. Like he was really into it. Yeah. And I remember he brought over a WrestleMania DVD, and if I remember correctly, it was the Shawn Michaels versus Edge WrestleMania. I want to say it was WrestleMania 25. I think
WrestleMania 25. That would have been Triple H, Randy Orton. That would have been in 2009. That was
I think that's what it was.
That was Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, in the greatest match in probably pro wrestling history.
You know what? Then I'm lying. I think he brought over WrestleMania 23.
23 would have been the one in Detroit.
Yeah, I think that's what he brought over. Yep. Yeah. But it was just like, that was my introduction to all of it. And for me, it's like there's something about storytelling. There's something about the magic of... one of the things about wrestling that's unique, different than anything else, is it's a sport that's interactive with the audience, and it's so dependent on the audience. Like, things change so spontaneously because of reactions that happen in the moment, and it doesn't happen anywhere else.
No, it really
Nowhere
doesn't.
else.
It really doesn't.
It's a magical thing, and I think that people who don't get wrestling, it's so sad because there's something so cool going on there.
Yeah,
and it's so hard to explain it to them.
Here's some advice. If people ever question why you're a wrestling fan, ask them this. Why are you a fan of Spider-Man? Why are you a fan of Batman? Why are you a fan of the Incredible Hulk? All those things aren't real, but guess what they are? They're entertaining, right? So the next time somebody asks you, oh, why are you a fan of wrestling? Just hit them back with that. Because at the end of the day, you love Star Wars because it's entertaining, but you know it's not real. Wrestling is, by the way, real. Just it's pre-scripted. That's it. The moves that they do, the bumps that they take, it's all real. It's just predetermined things that are happening. So yeah.
Rick Rubin said in an interview, I think he said it on Joe Rogan, and I think he said it somewhere else as well, but he was talking about how, in a way, wrestling is real and the world is fake. And I think that's such a cool way to put it because, like what you just said, it's pre-scripted, but in a way, like, a lot of life is fake and we put on things. That's why my rap name is Ruse. In a way, everything is a ruse. We put on a ruse. But in professional wrestling, there's a reality that happens within that fakeness, and that's where the best shit happens. That's why people like CM Punk elevate above everybody else in a cultural way, because they tap into that real element that's underneath everything else, like Stone Cold and Vince tapped into a real thing, like an undercurrent.
It's those people that can grab and gravitate an audience and make them feel something. Because when you watch a movie, you're watching it to feel something. Because in a movie, you have comedy, you have horror, you have all of these emotions that regular people feel every day. So that's why you find movies and TV shows and all of those things entertaining. Wrestling's the same way. For me, I've talked about it on a stream that I've done with my buddy Ango over on YouTube. The reason for me, right? People ask me, you probably watch AEW, correct?
I don't as much as I should, but go on.
So if you don't know, AEW is the company that brought CM Punk back to wrestling after his 7-year departure.
Don't get me wrong. I keep tabs. I don't know all the characters. That's what I should say.
Well, yeah, no. This is based on a story of CM Punk because I seen that you brought his name up. So CM Punk, for me, holds a special place in my heart. You know, I've talked about it before, so my fans, they know, they're aware. You know what I mean? But to the people that don't, CM Punk, for me, my stepfather passed away. And the last conversation that my stepfather and I had was actually about CM Punk returning. My stepfather passed away in August of 2021, which, if you don't know, was the same exact month that CM Punk returned to wrestling.
Wow.
So the last conversation that I ever had with my stepfather was that of such. It was, CM Punk is going to return to my stepdad, who was, a big Attitude Era fan, Stone Cold, The Rock, all those guys, right? Could not believe that CM Punk, that kind of name and that kind of caliber, would ever come to the second company, right? Because that's what AEW is to WWE in many people's minds. It's the second company.
And the thing is, too, like, if you think about it, back in the day, like, it's almost like imagining CM Punk going to TNA from WWE in 2010.
It doesn't happen.
You can't even imagine it.
It doesn't happen.
Yeah, it's not real.
Right, exactly. So in his mind, it was, why would CM Punk ever do that?
In my mind, that's like John Cena going to AEW. Like, that's not...
It's not a thing.
Can you imagine?
It's not a thing.
It would have the same pop. I bet you that would have the same pop.
It would. If John Cena walked through the curtains of AEW, and my people know, one thing that I am big for is fantasy booking. I will fantasy book through the moon. Because
that's one of the other things that I love about wrestling is fantasy, but I could do it all day.
Dude, fantasy booking is the best. So yes, the pop that John Cena would get walking through the curtain of AEW.
So who would he face? if you're fantasy booking? Who is
MJF.
It? Yeah.
MJF.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
Of course.
That's not even a question. John Cena, MJF, two people that can gravitate emotion and make you feel something. That's my kind of pro wrestling. I want to feel something.
And just those promos alone.
They would
it's
be
not even
amazing.
the match.
They would be
man.
outstanding. So I want to say, by the way, real fast, what you're doing is cool. I love watching what you're doing. I think, at first I was like, oh, maybe he's just based off music. No, dude, I've done a lot of deep diving. You're doing a little bit more than music, and I appreciate you having me on.
Oh, thank you. So when you say that, when you say more than music, what are you seeing? Tell me. I don't know what I'm doing over here. I must be a madman.
So So number one, it takes a certain person to understand that content is king, like we talked about earlier, right? It takes a certain person to understand that you need to do a little bit more than music, and it seems like that concept has clicked with you. I looked at your TikTok. I can't remember the follower account that you had. It was 100,000. Would that be right?
Oh, I wish. It's about 20,000, but the likes is at like 300,000. Yeah.
Okay. So I knew I was up there, and I was kind of right in some direction. But yes, I seen the likes and stuff like that. But even 20,000 people, when you really put it into perspective, it's kind of crazy, and it only tells me that you're doing something right and something is working for you, man.
Yeah, well, dude, the thing is, again, it goes back to what we were saying before. It's putting in constant, like, the thing is, you kind of just have to get used to this idea of it doesn't even matter if it's good or bad. It's just whatever you are doing that particular day, because that's the stuff that usually works the best. It's like, just creatively speaking in general, it's when you've gotten into the groove of the creativity and you're just putting out stuff, that's when you really start to put out the good stuff.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in my mind, if you want to make the best content, you do kind of just have to practice a little bit, and then and I don't even love doing videos. Like I know that it's best if I put my mind to it and I do my best, but like, dude, editing drives me nuts. I swear to God, I'll sit behind a computer and I'll be like, I wish I just had a guy I could send this to and pay. Because
listen, it is a conversation that me and my buddies have all the time of how nice it would be to just, hey man, you mind cooking up this thumbnail for me? Oh my.
Oh, your thumbnails. So, you know what? I didn't think we were going to talk about this. I didn't think I have an opportunity. Your thumbnails are definitely, like, you've got the YouTube clickbaity thing down to a T, bro. It's kind of impressive. Like, I imagine you spend a good 30, 20 minutes on a thumbnail because you have to go find a photo. You got to, like, get it just right. It looks like you crop the character out sometimes.
So it all depends, right? It depends on the day. So some take 3 minutes, some take 20. I don't think I ever spend more than 20, 25 minutes on a thumbnail because I try to knock them out very quickly. But when I go into a thumbnail, I try to tell everybody you got to go in with a mindset. So number one, what did you talk about in the video? Okay. Well, number two, how are you going to get people intrigued in the idea of this could work, right? Like how are people going to perceive this when they see this thumbnail? How's it going to look? But yeah, no, I think I've seen so many wrestling channels, right?
Yeah, because there's a formula to that too. I mean, it's just like, it's kind of like all the advice I've heard about that it lines up with what you're saying. Like most of what I've heard is on like Mr. Beast videos or other things similar, where it's like what you're trying to do is not only have something that catches their eye, but it has to match up with what the content actually is.
Yeah,
so when they see it, it has to make sense. When
Yeah,
they click
because there has to be some kind of involvement into it with the video. I'll talk about my most recent video that I think I posted the other day. WWE Raw is moving to Netflix. Very quick, easy stuff. You know what I mean? Who do you throw on there? You throw on a Raw logo. You throw on a Netflix logo. You put Seth Rollins, CM Punk, Cody Rhodes. Easy. Right?
Yeah.
Because those are the three main people that we're seeing on Monday Night Raw all the time. So people instantly, when they think about it, they're going to click because, oh my goodness, CM Punk, Cody Rhodes, those are people that they can connect with when looking at that photo. So those are little things that you have to think about. And also, they're people that I talk about in the video. So, like, for instance, I know with you did the John Connor stuff. John Connor, it would be the same thing. I'd put John Connor there, and I'd put, like, a quote from John Connor on the thumbnail.
See, yeah, I've always struggled with text on thumbnails. We'll get off this in a second, folks. Believe me, we'll talk about wrestling.
Yeah. No, listen. So I will tell you, we will talk after this, and I'll give you some more advice on thumbnails.
right, yeah, we'll save it. This is a blossoming of a beautiful friendship. That's what we'll call this.
Yes, absolutely.
So let's get on the topic of wrestling for real.
Yeah.
First of all, I think we already kind of touched on the first question I got together here, which is like, what keeps you into wrestling?
Yep.
And I guess a next just a little follow up to that is, do you remember any of your first significant memories with wrestling? What it was specifically, your first time you ever really saw it?
Well, so it's kind of funny that you and I kind of have like the same first experience. Mine just so happens to be my actual first experience with pro wrestling would be the 2006 Royal Rumble. Yeah, the 2006 Royal Rumble. So it would have been when Edge faced John Cena for the WWE Championship and Rey Mysterio won. It was right after the Eddie Guerrero passing. So that's kind of when I was first introduced to it. But my first big experience in pro wrestling was WrestleMania 23, which was the one that you talked about earlier in Detroit.
Wow.
I was actually there live at the age of 9 years old?
No way.
Yeah, So that was like my first real experience with it. One thing I'll never forget is The Undertaker. I was beyond scared of The Undertaker, which is a little funny thing. I ran to the bathroom when he came out.
Who did he face that night?
Batista.
Ah.
Yeah, for the World Heavyweight Championship.
And who won? I can't remember.
Undertaker. Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding. Of
yeah.
course.
I was about to say, I hope you knew that. I hope as a wrestling fan that was something we knew. Because that man didn't lose up until, 2014?
Oh, I mean, so I didn't put that in my questions here.
No, you're good.
But actually, you know what? That was one of the things I thought about asking. So I'll just ask that one now. But it's just like, what do you think are the worst kind of things that have... one of my questions was the worst gimmicks of the last 10 years. But I guess that's a kind of a similar question, is what are the worst happenings in professional wrestling even? We could just ask those at the same time,
yes.
You know? Because they kind of go together.
They do. They go hand in hand. That's a really damn good question. The worst happening might have been dropping the ball on the Undertaker and who he lost to. I really think that him losing to Brock Lesnar in 2014 was a horrible mistake by WWE, and I think looking at the landscape of wrestling now and Roman Reigns, he needed that win more than Brock Lesnar ever did.
Oh, yeah. I mean, but the thing is, it was kind of hard to see that then, to be fair.
It was, but WWE always had a plan with Roman Reigns, and they knew that if you go back and really watch wrestling, because they ended up having Roman beat Undertaker at WrestleMania 33 3 years after. They had a plan with Roman. They knew that Roman was going to be their guy. So the problem is that you gave that away to a guy who was already made. Brock Lesnar was already a made man. He had done the UFC. He had won world championships. He didn't need that. In fact, it was teased in 2008 when Edge was actually supposed to be the one who beat The Undertaker and took the streak. It was supposed to be Edge, which at the time people would have been like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. Edge deserved that. That was something the heel Edge could have went on and completely talked about and, continued to have a crazy run with it. But that wasn't the case, and they ended up giving it to Brock. And then it just felt like it needed to be Roman, because now looking at where we're at to this day, knowing that they already had this plan in motion with Roman, that he was going to be the guy, WWE pushed him down our throats for years until finally during COVID, they got the thing to stick. And he won the world title. It belonged to him. So that, to me, is the worst mess up that WWE has ever made in terms of booking. Now, where's the gimmicks?
Oh, wait. Before we get off of this, so I have to say,
okay,
I feel like it should have been CM Punk. It should have been CM Punk, because his momentum, he was already off of a bunch of losses at the time, but he was still so hot. He he poured ashes on the Undertaker's face. I mean, come on.
So listen, everybody, and that's my thing though. CM Punk was still not the top level guy. He wasn't the guy that he could have used it at the time. And I think that's more or less what I'm trying to say.
The other thing I wanted to say too, though, is that Roman, I don't think he was in the moment yet. Like, if he got it now as Roman now, it would make perfect sense.
Right.
But in that moment, people would have rejected it.
Well,
they would have been
whole
like,
thing,
no,
so my whole
this
thing,
is not.
My whole thing about it is that it should have been saved. It should have never just been handed to Brock. And I think that's more or less of who, like, instead of who, it's when. It shouldn't have happened then.
And you know what? You know why I think you're right is because when it happened, I thought, well, you know what? It's probably because Taker just had to have it happen eventually, and he just accepted it's got to be this moment. It's got to be.
And
Brock.
I think
Who
that
else
was
is it gonna
probably
be?
half the conversation in the back with Vince McMahon. It was just, hey, it looks like you may be coming up on your time, but it never was, because the next year he went and faced Bray Wyatt.
That's what I was about to say too. Is like it didn't turn out like that,
No.
and that's why I gotta agree. Because as it plays out, he had a bunch of matches moving forward that weren't as meaningful, and that gets to my next thing. Is what I wanted to say. The worst happening in the last 10 years, in my opinion, is D-Generation X versus Brothers of Destruction in Saudi Arabia.
Oh man,
the
that
worst
crown jewel.
match.
Oh,
I think it was a disgrace to the legacy of Shawn Michaels and his retirement match. It's just it's so wrong. It's so wrong that it even happened.
So I mean, when you really think about it, Goldberg and Undertaker in Saudi was horrible. That was a disaster. There's a lot of wrongdoings that WWE had, but that one with the Brothers of Destruction was a shit show.
And when I say wrong, I mean like it is like if WWE were a religion, that would be anti-religious. Like, it's so wrong in the face of the lore of the company. Like, just watching it, you're like, no, this shouldn't be.
You look at Shawn Michaels and you're like, dude, you swore you were never going to come out of retirement. And what did you do?
Right. It's like, we all remember what you said, bro.
I'm not coming back. Like, I was there. I listened to the conversation. Like, yeah, no.
And you know what, too, is it kind of goes with something I saw you saying in your videos where it's like Triple H has kind of been bringing back this long-term storytelling thing that we haven't seen in a while, and it doesn't mesh well with that environment when you see things. I guess that happened before all this, which is good. We're seeing an improvement.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. You know what? I speak incorrectly because that was Vince. That was all Vince right there.
Vince, I'm not going to sit up and say that, because obviously when you think of pro wrestling, you think of Vince McMahon, right?
You know what? You're right. There's probably more characters that I'm not considering.
Vince McMahon, he, in his later years, going into like the 2010s, right? That's when I started to see a disconnect with Vince McMahon. And it came with age. You know what I mean? I thought Vince, as much as he wanted to keep up with the times, just don't think he could. And when they merged WWE and UFC, and they created TKO and Endeavor and all that, and it's a whole business thing that happened. But when the companies merged, everybody was under the assumption that Ari Emanuel was just going to take Triple H out of power and put Vince McMahon back in, when realistically that was not the case. Triple H ended up taking over the reins because Endeavor, the company that owns WWE, actually seen on the stock market what it was doing for business with Triple H in power. So Triple H being in power just said, oh, well, the stock is really high. Why would we fix something that's not broken? And everybody is now living in the world that they've wanted to live in for a very long time, and that is a Triple H ran WWE. And it's good stuff. Long-term storytelling. It's the best. It's great to watch. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and well, okay. So I feel like the prime, of course, it's got to be the Attitude Era, and that's why it's so tough.
That's what people connect with when they think of wrestling, is the Attitude Era.
And so but it's never like that. I mean, you got to remember, like with music, you got a band that's around for a long time. They're bound to change. So we're never going to have that again. I'm just so interested to see where we're going. And I guess that heads to another question I had for you, which is like, what is your opinion on the current state of wrestling? What do you see moving forward? What do you really think we're going to see in the next couple years or so?
So I am a firm believer in Roman Reigns is dropping the belt this year at WrestleMania to Cody Rhodes. it's like an ongoing joke right now on my channel. I think all my people, they tease me about it because of how passionate I get going into the idea of Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns. I think Roman will eventually walk away from the WWE, and I think he'll go do what The Rock and Cena did. He'll go to Hollywood. It's just what all those big superstars do. You know what I mean? But the current state of wrestling, I would think it is the healthiest it's ever been. Pro wrestling has never been healthier than it is right now. So if you really want me to get into the nitty-gritty of it, TNA just came back. TNA as a company, they changed their name back from, it was once Impact, but it is now TNA. And TNA is doing some absolutely outstanding stuff. And there are 3 main companies in the North America region. That's not including Japan, where they're over there doing great stuff too. So there's a lot of places for people to work. And when there are more places for people to work, more people can put food on the table and more people can feed their families and stuff like that. And I think when we think of pro wrestling, those are things that we need to think about, is these people at the end of the day are human beings, just like me and you. You know, we need to put food on the table for our families and, you know, things like that. And that's really what this is, you know what I mean? So I think the current state of pro wrestling it's healthier than it's ever been. AEW, TNA, WWE, they're all doing what they can. I know AEW right now is getting a lot of backlash for just some things that they have going on and the way that CM Punk was treated. But I don't think anybody should ever want another company to shut down, you know, because there are people in that company that have to put food on the tables, you know?
Well, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the CM Punk situation. Because, I mean, that seems to be a thing that a lot of professional wrestling fans are torn on for some reason. Now, I wonder if it's like that people have an affinity with CM Punk. Because really, it's like, to me, it's almost a psychological thing. You wonder. Mm-hmm. Because in my opinion, CM Punk did nothing wrong. CM Punk was... if you look at the whole thing, I've studied this. I like a scholar, okay? If you look at that whole situation, CM Punk had a lot of people coming at him in a lot of different ways in a place that he was not familiar with. He probably was nervous. As a matter of fact, my theory, even now moving into the way that his promos have been a little bit stilted lately, is that I think it's not even, there's no grand scheme or anything to it. I think he's just a little nervous now that he's just kind of been shaken up from the whole AEW thing, and now he's back. And because why else is CM Punk, the great CM Punk, stuttering? What's going on here? This is crazy. I think he's literally like he's shaken up. And so like when you're backstage and people are literally fucking with you 24/7, bro, you would go crazy.
Yeah. So I'll run it down for you, right? So this whole CM Punk situation, I've always kind of had like a even stance with it because, okay, number one, you've probably seen the All Out stuff with Hangman Page, the Young Bucks, stuff like that.
Of course. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, so you know the Brawl Out. So when I think about it, number one, the reporter who asked that question just asked the wrong question. I think it was Nick Hausman who asked the question, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. But he had asked the question to CM Punk. CM Punk obviously completely rambled off on what his thoughts were, talking about Colt Cabana, all of those things.
But from my impression, it was like CM Punk was ready to go because he started the whole thing with like, does anybody fancy themselves a reporter? I mean, like he was already gonna do it.
Yeah, he knew what he was going to do because of what Hangman had done before with going into business for himself in that one promo leading up to Double or Nothing, talking about workers' rights and stuff like that. But
which again is just kind of like, I can see why that if you're CM Punk in that moment, I don't even see how as a fan you could not sympathize with it. I think he handled that so well. Like if somebody's just coming at you so sideways out of nowhere, I think it's somebody misunderstanding the magic of what Punk does with something like a pipe bomb and trying to do that to him. And I could see why he'd be frustrated. And so, but then you got the whole Colt Cabana thing on top of it, and that piles up into this.
Yeah, and I think what happened is, and I think where everybody is at fault, and CM Punk including, I believe that all of them are at fault. If you want me to be personally honest with you, I believe that every single person involved in that situation is at fault. Number one, it starts with Tony Khan, and I really want to make that clear. It starts with Tony Khan. He's running a business. He runs All Elite Wrestling. He runs AEW. That should have never made it past the curtain. It should have never. So the first person that needs to be at fault in this situation is Tony Khan. Now, Tony Khan has taken responsibility for it. He's suspended CM Punk. He's suspended all of them at the moment in time when it happened, right? So he fixes that problem. Now, the problem is that it doesn't really happen in the moment, and he doesn't know how to stop it from happening, which as a boss, you should know how to stop things from happening. That's why you're a boss. CM Punk was at fault in the situation because no matter what those people said, as a professional, you should never dimmer yourself down to that level. And to the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, all those guys, it should have never been a problem in the first place. Now, it starts with Hangman. Hangman's issue with CM Punk was that he felt CM Punk was coming in there trying to give advice. And this is all, I want to make this very clear, is this is not all 100% like factual. It's not what I know. It's just what I've read online, and it's no different than probably what you've read.
It's the dirt sheets.
It's the dirt sheets of pro wrestling. And if anybody new is here to pro wrestling, welcome to it. It's a sorry.
Oh, I already cursed. I already cursed earlier.
It's a fucking shit show.
It sure is, dude. That's why I don't even try to. I just try to stick to like light sources nowadays.
Yeah,
I don't try to go deep.
The best people to keep tabs on are on Twitter, and it's Sean Ross Sapp with Fightful Select. Everything that I report is reported by him first, and I think that's because he is the most number one. He's the most respected source, and you know when something is reported by Sean that it's 9 times out of 10 going to be true. There was the CM Punk thing returning at Survivor Series, but that's a whole nother topic that we'll probably get into here in a little bit.
We might as well. I mean, are you going somewhere else with this? I apologize.
So the last thing I wanted to say about this whole thing with, Hangman Page and all of them is that Hangman Page decided that he didn't want to take advice from an elder. Now, I want everybody to know that in this CM Punk situation, CM Punk was trying to offer Hangman Page advice. Hangman Page didn't want the advice. And I really want to make it clear to everybody that this is the real world. It's okay to not take advice. You don't have to. And if Hangman Page didn't want to listen to the advice, realistically, he doesn't have to. He's a grown man at the end of the day. Is he wrong for it? Yeah, CM Punk's an elder, somebody who's been in the business for a long time. Definitely should probably listen to that guy and take some advice from him. Now, where CM Punk was wrong was thinking that he had to take the advice. Does that make sense?
Yeah, right. He could just brush it off as a professional,
as a professional, and move on from it.
And the other thing was when he came out on a whole separate occasion and he pretty much invokes Hangman Adam Page again when it's truly uncalled for at that point.
It is.
He could have just left it alone.
That was the thing, is he came back out later on, or not later on, but just a
whole
couple weeks
separate
down the
night.
line. Yeah,
Which is even
way
worse.
After things had happened.
Yeah,
that's what made it bad. So
just forget about it, bro.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the professional side of it that you're like, oh man, like, we're touching boundaries here. So at the end of the day,
this is what gets me though, is that people are divisive about it and they look at all of that on the whole face of it and then say, oh, CM Punk's hard to work with. And it's like, no, it's nowhere near that simple. It's
I believe everybody was at fault in that situation. I don't think anybody was harder to work with than anybody. I believe they were all at fault. Everybody in that moment was hard to work with.
Exactly. And this is the thing, is you study any professional wrestling for a long period of time and you realize, oh, most of these people are crazy. Yeah. Most of these people they're all going to be hard to work with because they're doing professional wrestling for a living. That's a crazy lifestyle.
It's not easy.
Are their mentality. Yeah. Look at freaking Vince McMahon. Just like study his life for an hour and you will be amazed at the things you find.
You're going to go down a rabbit hole.
He's an anomaly.
He is.
He's literally an anomaly of a human. And that's the type of thing that professional wrestling produces. Matter of fact, that's the only thing that could have produced the professional wrestling that we see today. It's so
Vince
crazy.
McMahon.
That's where it all comes from.
It's
that
the man
one guy
who bought a company off of his father for $1 million.
Yeah, I mean, if there's any monopoly that I respect, it's got to be that one. Yeah. I got to say, I can't hate on the WWE.
Nope.
I just can't.
It's a crazy place, man. It's a crazy place.
Speaking of the WWE and where we're at today, so what do you think happens in terms of the whole competition moving forward? Do you think that it's actually possible AEW becomes a significant competitor for WWE? Or do you think we just kind of see this thing where the ratings kind of, I mean, there's the whole Netflix thing that just happened just before we did this podcast, which is crazy because that kind of is a whole other layer to that conversation now. Because really it's about where everything's at and what people watch. That's really what the story is. And the truth of the truth is, in my opinion, a lot of people stopped watching TV a long time ago. I think Vince kind of burned people out from the 2010s to the 2020s specifically. And then you see, like for me, the things that really killed me were, like you said, Undertaker losing to Brock. That hurt my spirit. Losing CM Punk hurt my spirit. There were a couple other things that really hurt. Brodus Clay coming out as a Funkasaurus hurt my spirit. Okay, there's a couple things.
I forget about that sometimes.
I was pumped. I was like, Brodus Clay is gonna be a killer, and then
it was not. It was not. It was almost like I'm not sure if you remember Lord Tensai.
Oh, I do.
Yeah,
I do.
Seeing him, I'm having a brain fart.
Weren't they in a tag team? Did they end up?
Yes, they ended up tag teaming. Yes, and it was just it didn't need to happen. A-Train is the name that he had prior, before Lord Tensai.
Lord Tensai wasn't even that bad of a gimmick. That could actually work pretty well as a monster heel.
Yeah, I mean, looking at somebody like Karrion Kross, who, you know, he came out on TV with armor on. It's like, yeah, you could have got that to work if you just would have did it right.
Hey. Well, and that's the thing. So, like, these are the things that burn people out, and I think that's all overall what even contributes to an AEW, and that's why you have the beauty of the Renaissance era, you might want to call it today, where you see people kind of turning around and going, you know what, we already had this whole PG. I don't know if Renaissance follows PG. I don't know what the whole chronology of it is, but I have to imagine that's what it is.
Yeah.
So, if that is the case, I hope we're at the very beginning of a new era. So I have to ask you, after I say this monologue, you tell me, sir, what's your predictions moving forward? Do you think New Japan's going to become the new WWE? What do you think it is?
So number one, I'm here to tell you nobody's taking over WWE's spot. Just understand that. As a pro wrestling fan, WWE is way ahead of the game. They have 20 years on AEW. You know what I mean? In North America, they have 20 years on them. Try catching up to that. It's really hard. Now, is AEW doing a great job at being a number two? Absolutely. They're doing a wonderful job. Silver isn't that bad. I talked about it on one of my videos. Silver isn't a bad color when you think about it, right? Silver is not bad. The problem with AEW is they focus too much on WWE. They've allowed a lot of things to be said in their company about WWE versus WWE, who just did recently, I want to say it was this past Monday, with CM Punk and Cody Rhodes, two guys that were once in AEW, two guys that AEW, what many people say, dropped the ball on. Those were two very important people in pro wrestling in AEW, and just walked over to WWE and they created magic there. So two guys who had trouble, constant battle, all of these things in AEW. Cody Rhodes was the creator. He was the creator of AEW. He was the guy with the idea. To walk into WWE should tell you everything that you need to know about WWE.
Well, and it goes back to what you said before, even about Tony Khan, too, though, because both of those things are kind of a result of the overall leadership, I believe, of Tony Khan.
Yes.
He just doesn't seem to take control of, like, and that's kind of the problem of having even wrestlers being in control of your company. I don't know if you listen to Cornette at all, if you listen to his podcast.
So I have a problem, right? So I have this thing over on my channel. I do know a lot about Jim Cornette, and I have watched, but around here, yeah, it's hard to listen to other people, man, because it's hard to take ideas, because a lot of these people in the podcasters, I know for you it's a little bit different. You know what I'm saying? You've probably been down a rabbit hole. But as somebody who does this for a living and stuff like that, like, it's hard to sit up and listen to these guys because they all have their own takes. And it's like, yeah, some of it's right, but a lot of it I disagree with. So constantly, as it's weird, right? Because in music, you respect everybody. Here, it's like, okay, well, I want to argue this now, right? Because Jim Cornette may say something and I may be like, oh, I want to argue that. But like, what? It's a weird thing. It's this constant weird thing.
That's funny. It's kind of like how I have this thing where I don't want to read a movie review or see anything about a movie review, because if you give me an impression, I know I'm impressionable enough to where if I go see the movie, I'm going to be thinking, wait, well, why did they say this movie was so good?
Yeah.
Like, it's not that good.
Yeah.
If everybody's saying a movie's great, I'm going to think, oh, this movie's going to be great. And then I go in there, and is it not great? I don't know. Or I'll just think it's great automatically because they told me it was great. I don't know. I'm impressionable. I can tell you this much.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
It is. At the end of the day, it's perfectly fine. Like, I respect somebody like Jim Cornette, who obviously has so many years in the business. It's unheard of how many years is in the business Jim Cornette has. So that guy, if anybody has an opinion, somebody should listen to it. You should absolutely 100% listen to Jim Cornette.
Well, that's the reason I like listening to him over anybody else, is because I feel like he at least has a solid opinion of what, and that's why I even referenced him, is because I mentioned the thing about you have wrestlers in control of a wrestling business. Like, that's kind of unprecedented when it comes to a major business. Like WWE and TNA, they didn't have that going on, and I'm pretty sure TNA didn't have wrestlers. I mean, I think, wasn't Jeff Jarrett in a major role in that company? I'm pretty sure he was.
But
Jarrett, I don't think it was...
Jeff Jarrett, he was big, in TNA.
I think he was.
Yeah, Jeff Jarrett.
I thought he had a major role in that company.
The Jarretts actually own TNA.
Oh, well, that's what it was. Yes. I wasn't sure if I was misremembering.
Yep. Him and his dad.
You have that, but that's So he's the owner at that point. You don't really have a whole bunch of wrestlers involved in the tentacles of the corporation aspect of it, and I think that's the problem with something like AEW as well. Is you have that plus Tony Khan, who's a guy who wants to be friends with everybody, and he wants everybody to get along, and you can't do that if you have people who aren't naturally meshing. Like, their whole thing is that they fight on stage. That's the whole thing. So that's the magic of Vince, is that and Triple H now, is that he kind of takes advantage of. That's the magic of that promo you mentioned with CM Punk, Cody Rhodes.
Beautiful.
Is there's a reality happening there.
Yes.
There's something that you believe in, because you want to see these guys go at it.
Yeah.
And if you're somebody like Tony Khan, you're kind of afraid of that. Like, if it was Vince, he would have taken advantage of that. He would have said, let's book these guys for a match.
Because business, business at the end of the day. That's one thing that AEW, I think, will forever have in the back of their mind that they may have messed up on. And it's the idea that Kenny Omega and CM Punk did not have a match at All In at Wembley Stadium. I think in the Young Bucks or maybe just CM Punk and FTR, I think that's one thing that AEW is constantly going to have over the back of their head now, is that they never got to create that magical moment that they could have brought out and could have had so many fans in attendance, with the idea that you just put business first and put personal second. And CM Punk was always interested. There were many reports that came out, so I'm not going to say that these are 100% factual, but there were many reports that came out that CM Punk wanted to sit down. He wanted to talk to those guys. He wanted to work it out because he wanted to put business first, and knew that it almost gives me goosebumps. Sitting down with those guys, they could have made millions of dollars off that one little petty blast that CM Punk had, and they didn't. Yes, I get it. Tony Khan's a billionaire. He has a lot of money. Doesn't mean he doesn't want any more. And that could have made him a lot more money when you put it into perspective.
But like CM Punk said at the very end of his return to Monday Night Raw, I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to make money. Yep. I truly believe that was a Tony Khan call out. I really do think that's what it was.
So it was. And the crazy part is that when you really think about what it is now and where they are, just recently we talk about the promo with Cody and CM Punk. That promo, it affected a lot of people in smaller ways than many people would know, or bigger ways, than many people would know. CM Punk, it was funny. He said something in the promo. Both of them did. He said, CM Punk said, my dad was an electrician, which makes me more of the American dream than you. Obviously referencing Cody Rhodes' father, Dusty Rhodes, the American dream. And then they talked about that pipe bomb promo that we've kind of referenced in this podcast. The pipe bomb promo, CM Punk went out. He completely shook pro wrestling up in 2011. I want to say it was 2011, 2010 or 2011. Completely shook up pro wrestling at a time where it was really going downhill. And we talked about that 2010 era and how it was really bad. It was, but we had this. The pipe bomb, that pipe bomb promo that happened, it shook up the industry, and many people heard it. So much so that somebody like Cody Rhodes heard it. And Cody Rhodes told CM Punk that when he left, he said, hey, you dropped the torch. You didn't care who picked it up. But you know who picked it up. And it was me. Because everything that you ushered and said in that promo, I did. Which would make me more CM Punk than you. Tell me that doesn't make you feel something.
See, that made me think, because I really had to think about it. Mm-hmm. It made me think about the legacy of CM Punk, right?
Yeah.
Because is that true? Is that truly factual? Is it really true? For one, I think that when CM Punk said that about him being more the American dream than Cody Rhodes, I thought that was a great line.
It was.
And I think that Cody Rhodes, if they didn't talk about that in the back, if that's really them impromptu, they really are like masters of their craft. Because that
100%.
is, it was truly is.
Now,
like,
I do believe these things were kind of, I definitely think they were bulletin, maybe, hey, I'm going to say something about this. I don't think word for word, that's exactly what happened. But I do think there was some kind of discussion in the back.
Yeah, I always wonder how scripted everything ends up being.
So it's just more of a bulletin thing, like, hey, I'm going to touch on this, and then we'll go from there. It's not at least with those guys. So, somebody like maybe a Kira Tozawa, he's going to have a scripted promo where they're going to be like, hey, go out and say this. But the guys like CM Punk and Cody Rhodes, who obviously are just very good at what they do, they're going to be like, hey, yeah, just hit these right here and cover those bases and then go out there and do what you need to do.
But the American Dream line, the CM Punk line, it made me think, you have this idea where CM Punk did say all of this and then he did drop out of the industry. And in a way, I mean, even when you look at the CM Punk MJF feud and everything MJF said in that, there's some truth to what MJF said directly to CM Punk.
Punk's a hypocrite.
So that's the thing in my heart, because that's the reason I'm really getting back into wrestling, and I've always kept tabs throughout all the years. But seeing CM Punk return, it really brought me back in a big way.
It brought a lot of people back, brother. I'm here to tell you, it brought a lot of people back.
Yeah. I mean, how could it not? He's the dude. He's the guy.
He is.
For me, he's the guy.
That's my thing, is as much as CM Punk is a hypocrite, so are you and I, right?
Okay, and that's what I was going to say. CM Punk is best as the bad guy. He's a heel at heart. And in my heart and soul, you turn that guy heel right now. You stop wasting our time. You turn him heel immediately. What are you doing? And I was hoping at first that he was kind of teasing a heel turn. And what we were seeing going on is he's doing, like, especially when he did that handshake with Adam Pearce. And it was all like he was looking in the camera and he was saying, like, it just felt so on point. It was like, CM Punk, is this like a corporate Punk thing we're setting up right now? And now that's why I told you my theory is maybe he's just nervous. Like, I've really been thinking about this because I want a heel CM Punk so bad.
Listen, what they're doing right now is they're capitalizing on the idea of CM Punk just being back in the WWE. Obviously, you have to get that out of the way. You have to capitalize on him being the good guy right now.
We're doing long-term storytelling.
So, the Summer of Punk. You best believe that CM Punk and Seth Rollins are going to go one-on-one at WrestleMania. That is the match. I want to make that very clear for people, is that will be the match that you see. Come back to this video and you can quote me on it. CM Punk versus Seth Rollins will happen in the main event of night 1 of WrestleMania. Now, what's going to happen next? Oh, well, Drew McIntyre is going to cost CM Punk. This is something that me and my buddy Ango on his channel have talked about numerous times. Drew McIntyre, the next night on Raw, is going to come out and he is going to spoil the CM Punk run. CM Punk's only going to hold that belt for a day because Damian Priest is going to come in and cash in. So you're about to turn Damian Priest into because Damian Priest is already kind of starting to tease the idea of him in the Judgment Day, so he's going to be a good guy. So him cashing in will just be a good guy scenario, right?
Okay.
But he's capitalizing because you have to understand that with that Money in the Bank comes capitalizing. It's just one thing that people should understand. Costs, so Drew McIntyre is going to take what CM Punk stole from Drew McIntyre, and that was the World Heavyweight Championship. I made a video on it. I'm not sure how much you keep up with the day-to-day product. Drew McIntyre has the most logical heel turn in the world. It makes sense. It's a legitimate villain arc. It's so many people have done me so wrong that I can no longer bear it. It's like I have to hold a grudge. How many times have you held a grudge? Probably numerous times. And he's going to hold that grudge with CM Punk. So eventually, down the line, what you're going to get is CM Punk as the bad guy because CM Punk is going to get tired of people costing him those big moments. And then you see him shaking the hand with Adam Pearce. You see him WWE. That guy? Yeah, that's a corporate dude who blasted that company for years. CM Punk shit all over WWE and comes back randomly and just magically loves the company. No, that's a bad guy. He's a corporate guy, right? You see where I'm kind of going with this? The corporate idea you're absolutely right about. How can a guy be such a hypocrite that he's gone on the internet, talk shit? This is the worst place I've ever been, my mental health. And comes back and just, I love this company. It's my favorite place. No, it's not. We know it. You're a hypocrite. And that's what's going to turn him into a bad guy. If we're really going to break down the logic of it, he's a hypocrite.
The beauty of that is that it plays into the reality that CM Punk rides on so perfectly anyways.
Exactly.
For him to become a heel because he is a hypocrite makes perfect sense because truly he is. And it taps back into that thing I mentioned about the MJF feud that they had.
That's one of the greatest feuds to this day.
Yes, it truly was because it felt so real.
Yep.
And I kind of still think it was. It's still real to me, damn it.
So, yeah, hey, at the end of the day, if you can understand that, yeah, there was probably some animosity, there was probably some words said, all of those things, yeah, no, you have to understand that some of that probably was real. MJF, go back to the picture with MJF and CM Punk. Dude, it doesn't get any realer than that.
Well, I was going to mention the promo where they hugged, and then you have him
CM
going...
Or the white T-shirt or whatever.
Yeah, the apology.
Yeah, yeah, I remember that. That was at Daly's place.
Oh, it's just, it's such a...
If you go back and watch the timeline of that... If you go back and watch the timeline of that feud is insane. All the way around.
And that's the beauty of wrestling, and I'm just hoping we get some more of that moving forward. I think that they've planted a couple seeds with Punk so far.
Yeah,
what do you think are some big... Oh, continue, sorry.
No, my apologies. I just think those are things that you're going to see digress over time.
Yes, well, I was going to say, what do you think would be some good feuds? What do you think are some good pairings you could see in a couple companies? So,
Cody and Punk right now is obviously... watching that, it felt like Rock and Austin.
Oh, I know, because I was scrolling through comments as I tend to, and I saw a few people expressing that sentiment where it's like I would watch weeks to months of this.
Yeah,
like, this
absolutely, and I think that's the thing. It's you've just in one little segment that was promoted a week beforehand was the aura. In wrestling we talk about the word aura. The aura in the arena, it felt big. It felt like money. Felt like main event. You know what I mean? So,
and there's not too much of that in the last 5 years or so, I would
there's
say.
not. But now, WWE is in a really good position. I'm not just going to talk about WWE here. But they are in a really good position right now in the sense of there are so many guys that could be the guy in that company. You have Cody Rhodes. You have CM Punk. You have Sami Zayn. You have Gunther. You have Jey Uso. You have Drew McIntyre. You have Roman Reigns. You have LA Knight. You have Grayson Waller. You have a bunch of names, and I could just keep listing if I really wanted to. But WWE has never been in a more comfortable spot when it comes to who can take the ball and run with it. Seth Rollins recently got hurt. Seth Rollins, people were worried about, oh, well, he's the World Heavyweight Championship. What happens? And then Gunther came out, and people were like, oh, shit. That makes a lot of sense. Gunther could be the guy. Yeah, he could. He really could. You don't need to tell me any kind of story. You could just let him be the guy because it's believable. I've seen Gunther enough on my TV to be like, hell yeah, that guy should be the world champion. You know what I mean? So WWE is in a really good place when it comes to like top guys and that stuff. But Cody and Punk is one that comes to mind. Roman and Cody is huge to me. I still believe there's a lot of money in that. And I do believe that at WrestleMania 40, we get that in night 2 of the main event. I think Cody finishes the story. Again, that's a big topic. But Cody and Roman, then you have...
so what's
Seth,
night 1?
Night 1 should be Seth and Punk.
Oh, there you go.
So it's funny. I talked about it in mine and Ango's post show that we do. So, we talked about it, and it was... We seen what happened with Cody and Punk, and everybody instantly thought, like, that needs to be WrestleMania this year. No, it doesn't. Those guys are going to be here for a little bit longer, right? That's something you can do a year from now, 2 years from now. You let it build, right? People, again, we go back to this, we live in such a moment in time to where that moment with Punk and Cody felt huge. That they forgot that a month ago, Punk and Rollins had one of the biggest interactions I've ever seen. Punk and Rollins looking at each other, and Punk saying what he said, and then Rollins being like, I hate you. Do you know how strong of a word hate is? It's a very strong word. To just look at... Go ahead.
I saw in one of the comments, one thing I really appreciated about that promo is somebody said that he did what Hangman Adam Page was trying to do.
Yes.
And that's exactly what that was. Because, like, he rode the line of reality in the right way to where, as a fan, you feel everything he's saying, but it's not like you lose him at any point. It's not like he's going in business for himself, as one would say. It's just... That all makes sense, especially if you're somebody who... One thing CM Punk's so good at, and with this magical thing we're talking about here, is like, it's for the people who actually pay attention. It's for the people who do go deep on those, like... Because that line in particular only makes sense with the Seth Rollins line that I'm talking about. It only really makes sense if you know the truth of all of that, which you'd have to have listened to the whole Punk Colt Cabana podcast.
You have to understand it all.
Why Seth Rollins even has this disdain for CM Punk to begin with.
Seth looks at Punk as a hypocrite, as one would. He looks at him as, you spit on my flag. And I ran with the WWE flag when you left. I'm the guy.
And it's true. And it's not untrue. And that's the thing about all of that, is that it all plays into that CM Punk hypocrite angle. And it's kind of hard for CM Punk to even... he can't even argue with it.
No.
He did just leave. It is what he did.
Yeah, that's what
happened.
And
not only that, like you said, he just went on a podcast and straight talk shit for 4 hours. 4 hours.
His mental health... the doctors treated him like he sued them.
They sued him, I thought. I thought they sued him.
It might have. So they sued him. He countersued.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah. And they sent him his termination papers on his wedding day.
Yeah. And that was, I think, the true thing that even brought the podcast about. I think he just felt personally wronged.
Yeah, he did. He felt like they were coming out to get him, and Vince later on would go on to apologize to him and be like, hey, like, you know, that was never the case. It was never that just so happened to be the day that the papers came. You can't predict when the mail's going to come. It just so happened to fall on that day.
You know, when you really think about it, CM Punk really did just, he did kind of not give fate too much credit on that one.
He really did. No, he shit all over them because he got the papers on his wedding date. It's like, that was going to happen.
Like, bro, you really think Jeff Bezos is on top of it like that?
You know what I'm
I don't
saying?
even get my package until.
Come on now. Come on.
Let's be real here, and then we're talking 2008. Like we weren't even into shipping that fast. So I'm sure he probably sent that letter out. That's the whole thing, though. Is if following that whole situation, it wasn't just that. It was also the thing where you had CM Punk, who he didn't necessarily try to leave. I think that he thought he was on break. Right? Isn't that the whole story? Is that he thought he wasn't working there for a little bit, and then they told him, "You're not coming back at all." If I remember correctly, I thought that's what it was.
No, so that's not what happened. CM Punk walked out. CM Punk at the Royal Rumble in 2014.
I apologize. Yeah, he had that whole interaction with Vince and Triple H.
Yep,
and then he left. But there was the whole thing was that the contract never. You still have a contract, of course. That's the whole thing. So is he breaking his contract? Are we going to allow CM Punk to do this? He is kind of a megastar. That's probably what's going on in the mind of Triple H and Vince. Yeah,
that's why
that's why they ended up having to do something at all.
Yeah,
that's why they ended up sending him papers.
Yep.
So in retrospect, you can see everybody's side of the whole situation.
Yeah, you start to look and be like, oh, well, was he wrong or were they wrong? And it just becomes, oh, well, everybody was wrong.
You know, as I mature, I understand Triple H's side of that situation more.
Well, Triple H was just kind of the guy under Vince.
Yeah, and he was kind of the fall guy of CM Punk for a lot of that.
Yeah. I mean, he was the one who got blasted.
He got blasted hard. I mean, Kevin Nash got a little bit, but like CM Punk, John Laurinaitis got a little tap or so, but it was Triple H that got pretty much everything.
Triple H was like the redheaded stepchild in this situation. He was the guy who in that regard, you're the son-in-law to the corporate man. You're the son-in-law, and this is gonna be all yours when it's all said and done. And yeah, I think Triple H really got the real heat over it, and I think that's why you see CM Punk come out with that shirt that hell froze over, and that's because it really did. CM Punk coming back to the WWE was the biggest thing that has ever happened in pro wrestling. It's bigger than Bret Hart. It is. It's bigger than Bret Hart.
I gotta say, it's what brought me back. It's what brought a lot of people back.
Exactly.
And I think that
should speak for itself.
And when you say bigger than Bret Hart, I think that even it plays into that whole thing that I mentioned about riding that line and that thing that's so attractive about wrestling. Because the reason that Bret Hart and the whole screw job thing brought everybody in is because what is that? What is a Montreal screw job? That's real life interacting with wrestling in a way that you can't even really.
You don't know if it's real or not.
Tell the story.
This man goes on national television and types WCW and makes sure he does it the correct way. That on camera they read WCW.
Yeah.
That's insane when you think about it. Like, how do you blur those lines? What's real? What's not? Like you said, it's the most attractive thing about wrestling, and I'd agree. It is. Blurring lines and not knowing what's real and what's not. And then many years down the line, I think that happened in 97 and 2010, he came back. So 13 years later, Bret Hart was back in the WWE. Obviously, he was way past his time by that time. But he did. Came back to the WWE, and he ended up squashing everything with Shawn Michaels and Vince, and so much so, I believe I forget who the ref was. I want to say it was Earl Hebner at the time, who was the ref in the match.
Now, if I remember correctly, this was around the time that TNA had a few significant returns happening, too. I feel like there was some TNA thing going on right around... Oh, no, I'm thinking when Bret Hart returned. What you're talking about.
Oh, so that was in 2010. That's when TNA had like AJ Styles. They had Hulk Hogan,
I think it was
Eric
Ric Flair.
Bischoff,
I think this was upon when Ric Flair or Hogan showed up in TNA. That's when we saw Bret Hart come back up.
Yeah, because WWE and TNA they were competing at the time, and there was a point where TNA like went on Mondays, and they Eric Bischoff just tried recreating what WCW did, and obviously he never could. Yeah, I mean, TNA was never going to be as big as the WWE. WWE just has too much of a mass audience, and And I think that's the thing is WWE's audience is so massive because it's not just you and I who understand pro wrestling and are fans of pro wrestling, but it also has young kids. It also has families. You know, that's why the WWE is so big. It's so diverse in so many different regards, and that's why when they get a deal from Netflix, they get $5 billion over the course of 10 years.
Yeah, because I think WWE, if it's proved anything, it's kind of like it's when they say they're one of the longest running episodic television shows of all time, you got to think about that. Like, think about the other ones that are on. They're not shows that are maybe you have like shows like The Simpsons or shows like this.
Yeah, but nothing live.
Nothing live, nothing where you have people traveling across the road every single week. You have writers writing every single week. You have this madman behind the whole process every single week.
Yes, absolutely. A complete madman.
I mean, there's something that happens there where you just, and I think that that's kind of the touch that WWE has that the other companies can never have. It's just something that's
it's not to say that they can never have it, but it's to say like, they'll never be able to recreate what the WWE has done.
No, and if anything, they shouldn't want to. No. And that's taps on what you said about the problem with Tony and AEW is that they're trying to do the WWE thing when they should just be embracing what they are and
that was
not
the whole
even
thing
go that
of
direction at all.
AEW is when I first heard about AEW, they were never going to be WWE 2.0. They were just always going to be AEW 1. They were going to be the alternative to WWE, and that's always what I wanted. So recently, I will say, AEW is doing a great job on their television show. I obviously it was on tonight, and we are doing this right now while it's on, so didn't tune in. But they are doing stuff by bringing like the ranking system back, which gives it more of a sports feel, which is something that I can appreciate, if that makes any sense. Like I can appreciate that. Now my problem is are you too late? Like, has that bridge already been burnt by the fans that it's going to be hard for them to go back to AEW even while they're trying to recreate? Those are questions that, you just have to ask.
Yeah, because I think that if you're somebody who's really into AEW and you see the way that certain things have played out and you see the way that certain politics happen, it's just kind of frustrating. And it's reminiscent of TNA. It goes back to TNA where you see that WWE 2.0 thing happen towards the end of its life cycle. You see this thing happen where it starts to flip, and now we're just trying to be the other guy. Honestly, even WCW, it's like history just repeats itself over and over and over again.
That's the constant thing. That's the constant thing with pro wrestling is that that is 100% something that you should expect.
And WCW, I mean, that's one thing I've been meaning to research. I know there's books about it, but I really want to get into the downfall of that. I mean, not in this conversation, but just in general.
There is if you really want to see the downfall. Do you have Peacock?
I do, actually, yes.
You do have Peacock, okay. So, on Peacock, if you go into the WWE section, right, there is a program. It is, it's the Monday Night Wars. They actually did a documentary series on it with all the guys actually talking about it from that time. So, you get like an in-depth look on like how it was when WCW was coming up, how it was when they were competing, when they started beating Monday Night Raw, and then when they fell. So if you really want to do research, I think it's like maybe like 20 episodes. But they talk about like Goldberg, they talk about Sting, and all those guys. They come on and they talk about it. It's very interesting stuff.
Yeah, that's probably the best way to do it. Is something that has the visual aid going on.
That's the thing, is you can get the visual leg.
Yeah, and you want to see everybody. I mean, unless you're watching it week by week on like episode by episode, it's very hard to get a real feel. That's the whole problem with a lot of that stuff. Where if you weren't there in that moment, like it's kind of hard to explain what the CM Punk pipe bomb really was if you weren't somebody who watched wrestling.
Because at the time, it didn't make any sense. It didn't make sense until later down the line. You know what I mean? Like later in the years.
It's so ahead of its time. It's so because what he was doing there, like now when everybody's kind of now you see wrestlers who are kind of so beyond kayfabe that when you have somebody like MJF who's so in character
and blurring the lines.
Yeah, that's like he's the one who's breaking the mold and doing something different. But I think that CM Punk, when he came out and he did that, he was the one who initiated that change in a way. Because I mean, you see so much change happen for that. That was truly a revolutionary promo in so many ways. Because you didn't have people going out there and doing that for at least a long time. I mean, maybe you had. I think there's a similar promo of Heyman doing that in the late 90s.
I mean, Heyman was always Cornette, the guy who made you feel something.
When Jim Cornette was on Raw in the late 90s, there's a couple promos of him doing a similar type of pipe bomb promo where he's talking
Jim was always off the Jim was always off the script.
Oh, dude, well, that's kind of the magic of him. I feel like if you're somebody who loves wrestling, do you at least watch Jim's promos? Have you seen a decent amount of his promos?
I'm here to tell you, I'm not a big watcher of his podcast, but I know a lot about Jim Cornette.
Okay, because that guy's wild.
He is somebody who, I mean, I watched Dark Side of the Ring and heard him talk about wrestling from the 1930s, and you think about that, and you're like, man, 1930, how do you even know anything about that?
Yeah, he's just one of. Well, that's why I respect him. He's in it for the game.
It's just like music. He respects the business.
Yes, and the thing is, like, that's the tragedy of a lot of wrestling in modern times. And I think it's a divisive topic, but I truly feel that, like, when you look at somebody like Bret Hart, the more and more you get into wrestling, the more and more you see the injustices of the Brock Lesnar's beating the Undertaker streaks and the Saudi Arabia matches and all this business interfering with the beauty that is the storytelling that goes down and also the technical aspect of the wrestling itself. You see people like Bret Hart get bitter with the business and turn over time, and then you hear them come out and talk about it, and the public perception gets torn because people say either one of two things. They say, oh, well, this guy's just bitter and he just hates the business and he can't look at things in a positive light. Or you see people who agree and they're like, oh, this guy's just telling the truth. Right. And I think you see the same thing happen with CM Punk that you do with a character like Bret Hart.
Absolutely.
It's like people who the business just burnt out over and over.
Yeah, and that's what happened.
How could you not? Because I think that's why I said that thing about people in wrestling are crazy. Like, if you're a sane, logical person in that business, you're screwed. It's kind of John Cena. It blows my mind how clear-minded and straightforward that guy is.
Yeah. John Cena is the GOAT of all GOATs. Him and Dwayne really "The Rock" Johnson are just two masses that should never even. I mean, those guys, they live in their own world, man. They are completely. John Cena and The Rock blowed the idea of WWE out the water.
They're Vince's wet dreams.
Yeah, those guys, they are their own entities. I'm not going to say they blow WWE out of the water. That's a little insane to say, but they do. They're masses. You know, they're attractions.
Yeah. When I say what I mean is, like, they are exactly what that product needs. Like, that, the attraction that the WWE needs is somebody like, and that's the bittersweet thing about when you were in the 2010s moving into the 2020s and they picked Roman Reigns for that role, it's kind of a tough thing because, of course, they needed a new John Cena. John Cena was going to Hollywood. Who else is that guy?
And at the time, Cody Rhodes wasn't what he is now.
No. That's interesting. I never even really thought about it that way. As Cody Rhodes being the new John Cena, I really never thought about that at all.
He is.
Wow, because I feel like now that I think about it, you're right, because Roman turned heel.
Yeah.
And since Roman's heel, you can't really call him the John Cena anymore.
No, Roman's the best bad guy we've ever seen, for sure.
Yeah.
He's the final boss.
Yeah.
Cody is everything that John Cena was. He's super Cody. He's the guy, right? He comes out and he saves the day, and there's... You're not going to mess with my friends. The kids love him. I love Cody. It's hard not to. How can you not look at that guy and be like, hey, that's a cool dude? You know what I mean?
I think it's the same thing we were saying with Cornette, where you see somebody who gives their life and soul to the industry, and that's why he's so lovable.
And Cody,
and that's what Cody wears on his shoulder.
Cody, and it was the same thing with John Cena. Not many people know John Cena has so much respect for pro wrestling. I just watched his thing with Logan Paul today on Impulsive. They talked about how John Cena was a constant watcher before he came into wrestling, and just how much respect he has for the business, and that's why he feels like he can't do it much longer, is because he doesn't want to make a mockery of the business. And it's like, dude, you can't do nothing but respect that. And Cody obviously came up in this business. Look at his dad, who his dad is, right? If anybody has respect for this business, it's Cody Rhodes. He's the guy, and he's always going to be the guy for WWE. That's why they gave him the cover of WWE 2K24. That's why he's done everything that he's done. He's had 100-something matches in 2023, and that's why he lost to Roman at WrestleMania 39, and that's why he's going to beat Roman at WrestleMania 40. Because if you look at the 10 numbers, if you go back to WrestleMania 10, Bret Hart, Owen Hart, that match, you go back to WrestleMania 20, Eddie Guerrero. I'm not going to say his name, but if you watch WrestleMania 20, you know who I'm talking about. Him, Triple H, and Shawn Michaels in the triple threat match. And then you go to WrestleMania 30 and you think about Daniel Bryan, though, all those big moments in those main events, and you think about those 10 years. WWE always has like this really big respect for the 10-year mark of what they're doing. WrestleMania 40, it doesn't get any bigger right now than Cody Rhodes. It doesn't. There's not a guy who is bigger than Cody Rhodes. You can say CM Punk, and I'd agree that CM Punk is obviously on that same caliber, but I don't believe that he's bigger. I don't. I don't think that CM Punk, I believe they sit similar. There's not one's bigger than the other. So Cody is the guy for night 2, just based off what we know. CM Punk is the guy for night 1. You know, that's the cool thing about WrestleMania right now is you get 2 main events. And why not make 2 feel-good moments, kind of like they did at WrestleMania 20? These are just things that you think about.
Yeah. When's the last time a heel won at a WrestleMania night 2, or at the very end of a WrestleMania?
This past year, Roman.
Oh, that was night 2. Yes, you're right. See, I again, CM Punk's return to WWE is really what brought me back. So I'm still trying to catch up on every single little thing.
I'll just run it by you. Yeah, Roman, he just won back at this past year. That's why the whole Cody story makes so much sense, is because Roman beat him last year, and Cody was supposed to finish the story. That's why he came to WWE, win the belt that his dad never had.
And I think what's so interesting about Cody, too, is I was a fan of Cody back in the day when it was dashing Cody Rhodes. Yeah. I was so into that gimmick. I had
that was a great gimmick.
We would be we would have so much fun together. Just we would be dashing, and we would talk to each other and just be dashing Cody. That was an inside joke between us.
Yeah.
Because that is a golden gimmick. And I think that Cody, looking back, seeing him now and just thinking about that character then, he took that with such pride.
He did.
If you imagine being Cody Rhodes, the great son of Dusty Rhodes, having this beautiful, this prideful self-image of yourself.
Looking at his eyebrows and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Vince says to you, hey, I got a great gimmick for you, son. And then you got the whole, what is it? It was dashing, then you have the undashing gimmick when Rey Mysterio broke his nose. And somehow he made that work. Honestly, on paper, that is a trash gimmick right there. That is one of the worst gimmicks of all time. You somehow took something great and made it terrible. And Cody Rhodes made that good. And so, it goes back to what you said about how Cody Rhodes just said to CM Punk the other day that he is more CM Punk than CM Punk. Because that is kind of what's so cool about that. He took what he was when CM Punk said that was a whole different person. Yeah. And I think that when he went to AEW and that whole rebirth of his character, it's kind of crazy just to see how he's taken that back over to WWE, and he's become the new John Cena, as you say, because he did that all on his own.
Yeah, so it's really funny. It actually doesn't even stem from AEW. He didn't do that in AEW. It actually started in TNA. Cody Rhodes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Cody Rhodes, the American Nightmare gimmick, I think it was actually not TNA, it was New Japan. It was they wanted to introduce him as the American Nightmare, and that's what they did. They introduced him as the American Nightmare. He came out with the theme song, Adrenaline, and it changed everything for him. And he ended up, that's how he was able to do the All In show. And if you don't know about All In, All In was an independent show based on all these independent companies coming together. Cody Rhodes, the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, they were all the ones who set it up, made it happen. And then AEW started. Tony Khan comes into the mix, and they create All Elite Wrestling. Cody Rhodes is an executive vice president. Cody Rhodes there for about 2 years, puts on what I still think may be the best match to this day, him and his brother Dustin in that match at Double or Nothing, I think is the greatest AEW match of all time.
I think Stardust versus Goldust was better.
Oh, man. Yeah.
I'm 100% serious, all right? I'm being for real.
He said, I'm serious. But no.
And that's kind of it's crazy the high that AEW started at with a match like that too.
Yeah.
I mean, that was an emotional roller coaster.
It was
kind of unparalleled in modern times.
Yeah, I mean, just the emotion, the blood, the sweat, the tears, the crying, all of those things. It was amazing. And then obviously, Cody Rhodes would go on to feud with MJF and stuff like that, and then eventually left the company and would turn up in WWE. And WWE, they bought technically what New Japan Pro Wrestling created, and that was the American Nightmare.
Yeah, and then the history happened from there, right? What do they say, folks? And then it's history, and then it's history, folks.
That's right.
That's history.
That's right.
That is wild because even just the hair turning blonde, it just kind of changes his whole character.
It was the best thing he ever did for himself.
Yeah, like
just dyeing
I can't
your
even
hair.
believe. Yeah. Because for some reason, he doesn't even look like the same guy to me anymore.
No.
Like, he looks like a man, and when I look at Dashing Cody Rhodes, I'm like, oh, that's a boy, and now I see a man.
Yeah, and it's just dyeing your hair. It's something that simple. And it was all because he didn't feel at the time that, he could be just like his dad, and he wanted to get away from his dad, and he wanted to get out of the shadow of his dad. And, then he would later to go on in his more adult life now where he's a man. He's got a wife. He's got a kid, he's doing manly things in my eyes. Would go on to talk about how he wants to be the light in the shadow of his father, which is a beautiful sentence when you think about it. Like, I don't want to get rid of my dad. I don't want to. If I'm going to be the shadow, yeah, I will be. But guess what I'm going to be? I'm going to be the light of it. There's somebody who lost their father, my real father and my stepfather. I'm very aware and I'm very upfront about how, I get that. I don't want to be just like my dad, or I don't want to be just like my stepfather. I want to be the light of that. I want to be the good that came out of that. So all the good traits that those two gentlemen once had, I want to now instill within me and bring those out. And I think that's what makes Cody Rhodes such a good character, is that he wants to bring all those wonderful traits that his dad has. He doesn't want to bring up, although he has talked about it personally, talked about how his dad struggled and all of those things. He doesn't want to do those things. He just wants to provide, and he wants to be the light. He wants to be the guy that everybody knew his dad to be, which to me is beautiful.
Yeah. I think it's selfless in the same way that his entire character is. I think it all just it rings so truthful because
it's not so much a character that we're getting from Cody Rhodes.
It's real. It's truly who he is. Mm-hmm. Exactly. It's not even really a character. That's why I not to harp back to that promo a million times, but I mean, CM Punk even said that it's great how he wrote that line. He said, don't take Royal Rumble personally, because I know that you take this entire business personally, because to you, it is personal.
Can you separate personal and business?
Yeah, because for most people, you say that to them, and that's just you're saying that to them. But for Cody Rhodes, that's a real statement.
Yeah.
Can he actually separate it? It's his whole life.
If you really, that was a lot of people I've seen online, and it might be a stretch, and it probably is one of the biggest stretches. But people were online talking about how CM Punk saying personal and business was obviously a reference to AEW. Not many people know why Cody actually left AEW. They don't know the reason, and he says it wasn't over talent or anything like that. So it had nothing to do with Punk or anything like that. He says that it's personal, and he's not allowed to talk about it. So CM Punk saying, "Is it personal? Can you separate personal from business?" is a huge line. And it's actually bigger in the concept of thought, because Cody Rhodes has publicly went on to say that he left AEW for personal reasons. Those were his exact lines.
Oh, I didn't think about it like that. Oh, and the context here is important, because you got to remember, this is CM Punk we're talking about. Mm-hmm. CM Punk would be that.
Oh, he'll drop that context
specific
clue all over the place. Context clues everywhere.
Oh, if that's what that was, that I totally get it, because that's kind of a mystery. Is the whole thing about Cody Rhodes leaving AEW? What happened there? So
can you separate the two?
Yeah, and my theory is at the very least, it's got to be similar to the CM Punk situation, where obviously Cody Rhodes is different, where you had somebody who kind of just couldn't really find the right way to play out his character. Mm-hmm. Everybody wants him to turn heel. He never turns heel, and somehow that becomes its own thing.
Yeah, that was a whole shit show. I remember that. Everybody was like, oh, and then he went on air to say he was a heel, and I was like, yo, no, you weren't. He was like, oh, well, I was the good guy, which made me the heel. I was like, damn, logic. Yeah, that makes sense. So Cody playing the good guy was technically him being a heel. In AEW, it made a lot of sense when he said it. I was like, damn, that does make sense.
You just have to accept it, okay? You just have to accept it.
Right.
But, man, I lost my train of thought. What was I saying about Cody Rhodes? Where was I going with that? The Cody Rhodes CM Punk thing. Yes. Where was I going? What were we saying?
The logic behind it.
Oh, yes. Well, just the whole, I don't know. You say something. I lost it. I totally lost it.
So, realistically, it was more or less going into what we kind of touched on of him being the heel and stuff like that. Cody Rhodes and everything that he's been doing has been, just something that we haven't seen in a long time. And him going on, leaving AEW, and all, whether they be personal, whether, it's hard to theoretically think about the exact reason. And that's what we were talking about, the exact reason why Cody Rhodes left AEW. It's hard to speculate on something like that because it's never been talked about. So it's hard to sit up and be like, oh, yeah, he left for this reason, or he left for that reason. It's very hard. But I will say...
And it's something that has weight to it, too. It's
something that... Because if it is personal, how could we ever speak on it, right?
Well, you have the whole CM Punk situation, which is arguably the biggest thing to even happen in AEW.
And that one's personal.
And that's very personal, exactly. So if those are kind of interconnected, and there is some type of connection there where, at the very least, you have people who both just dealt with the same types of issues. People backstage who didn't really like this big-time persona pulling a lot of weight. Yep. That would make a lot of sense. It would sure make a lot of sense. But who knows?
Right.
In the end, who knows? And it could be something else entirely, because all we can do is theorize. That's why I say it's such a mystery, and that's why I say I just look at it from the outside. And what we know about CM Punk, at the very least, was very, very. It was unnecessary.
Yeah.
I can't imagine Cody Rhodes being, as you said, unprofessional in the same way that CM Punk was, right? I can't imagine Cody Rhodes coming back with... No, he's just not that guy.
And my thing about it is we're all humans and we all have flaws and we all make mistakes. And whether it be that Cody made a mistake, whether it be that Punk made a mistake, or the Young Bucks, or Tony Khan, no matter who made the mistake, at the end of the day, they made the mistakes and they moved on with their lives. And I think as fans, right, as fans of pro wrestling, we should be able to accept that. I can respect the fact that Cody Rhodes is in WWE. I can respect the fact that AEW is still going out there and trying. Do I have to be a fan of it all? No. But can I respect it? Absolutely, because they're trying to move on from the situation, no matter how they handled it. It was bad situations at the time, obviously. So, at the end of the day, these guys going out and just doing their own things is something that should happen in the first place. You know what I'm saying?
My prediction is that in 2030, CM Punk is going to return to AEW and all the scars are going to be healed. It's going to be magic.
You never know.
You know what's funny is I'm joking, but at the same time, wrestling is so unpredictable that I'm kind of not joking.
Yeah,
like just recently. So there's two other things we'll talk about, and then we'll wrap this one up.
Okay.
But there's just recently one thing I never ever could have predicted happened, and I'm sure you feel the same way. Freaking Nic Nemeth.
Yep.
Returns to wrestling. I'm just not used to saying that freaking name. I'm just saying Dolph Ziggler.
Yep.
We got Nic Nemeth returning to wrestling in TNA of all places.
Oh, do you want me to get into this?
Yeah, because the thing is, when I read that headline, I was thinking, you know what? For some reason, that makes perfect sense. Like, if I would have read that 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I would have went, nah, come on now. But for some reason, in the year 2024, when I read that headline, I think, you know what? That's good for business.
Yeah, I'm here to tell you that Nic Nemeth is the reason why pro wrestling is healthy.
All right, explain that one to me, sir.
Nic Nemeth is the reason why we can sit up and say, oh, these guys can all go put food on their tables. Nic Nemeth is that guy. Why? He could have easily chose AEW now. Would he have just became possibly another guy in the back? Absolutely. Easily could have. But he chose to go to TNA, where right now TNA doesn't have a top guy. They don't have somebody that they can put on their back, and you can say somebody, maybe you know him or maybe you don't. Josh Alexander, who is doing amazing stuff over in TNA, very close to the top guy, right? But nobody with the name of Nic Nemeth or Dolph Ziggler. So Dolph Ziggler turning up at TNA Hard to Kill was the greatest thing that could have happened for pro wrestling right now where we stand, because now it makes another show, another wrestling company, must see, right? Because when he turned up, everybody wanted to know what he was doing. And maybe you don't tune into TNA every week, or maybe you do. Right now, he started a feud with Steve Maclin. And if anybody, not many TNA watchers in here, and truth be told, I wasn't a TNA watcher until my friend Ango got me hooked on TNA. Steve Maclin is technically...
I truly thought it was off the air. I truly thought it was over.
No.
I'm kind of surprised, but continue. Sorry.
Steve Maclin he was a former WWE guy, and not many people knew who he was. He was in NXT, though. So Steve Maclin actually in TNA became like the second coming of Stone Cold Steve Austin. Just with the attitude, everything like that. So Nic Nemeth is like the perfect counterpart to what Steve Maclin is doing right now. So Steve Maclin right now is playing the bad guy, and he's a dick, he's a prick, right? Nic Nemeth is the good guy, babyface, top guy, TNA, that guy. So right now,
somehow Dolph Ziggler has become John Cena.
Just by going to a different company. And Nic Nemeth actually went onto a interview and talked about how he's seen the writing on the wall in WWE. He knew he was going to be out. He knew he was leaving. He knew that they were going to fire him. And they did. He sat for 90 days, as most will because of the non-compete clause that they have in their contracts. Would sit the 90 days, do a bunch of workouts, stuff like that, get prepared, and then go over and become the guy in TNA he's in his 40s. It's crazy to think about. Honestly, insane. That guy's been wrestling since 2006, 2005 maybe, in the WWE.
And I would argue that he has the street cred of somebody like the caliber of a CM Punk or a Daniel Bryan, like people who were in the indies for a long time.
He does.
And then they turned up and...
That's why him going there is so important, because he has the name.
Exactly. And like it's kind of crazy just to think about that. You have somebody who was so underappreciated becoming a megastar in another company, essentially. Like they completely flipped the role. And it makes perfect sense. I mean, even if Dolph Ziggler went to AEW, I could imagine him just not being booked completely properly.
Well, that was the whole thing, and that's why everybody was so excited about him going to TNA, is because, yes, right now in AEW, he may not have been booked the best, in the best regards, at least.
Yeah. Whereas when you put him in somewhere like TNA, like you said,
he's
the
instantly
one
the
guy.
top guy. He's instantly the top guy.
Yeah, and there's so much worth to that, and it kind of brings people over to TNA. All you really need is just a couple more names that people may recognize, and even then, like, don't. That's the thing.
I've argued Will Ospreay going to TNA. I've argued Okada going to TNA. None of those guys
what I
would
was
be
gonna
bad.
say is what you just said. That's perfect. Like, as long as you don't dip super deep into that WWE bucket, as long as you just stay you don't just go too far that direction, because again, that's the pattern that seems to happen with these competing companies. Mercedes
Moné, I thought should have Sasha Banks. I thought should have been who went to TNA. I thought she was going to.
Yeah,
I thought she was. They do. In TNA,
well, she was your prediction, wasn't it? Because wasn't there rumors, or was it an announce of a return, or were there rumors?
There was. So they had teased that two worlds were going to collide, and everybody just assumed that it was going to be WWE and TNA, and they were going to do something together. And many thought that Sasha would kind of be that turntable between the two. But yeah, she was. She was my prediction because their knockouts division, so the women's division in TNA, is easily the best booked women's division across all three companies.
Okay. And why do you say that?
Just the production of matches and the storytelling that they do. Trinity, Naomi in WWE. Trinity Fatu went on and had some really good matches. She was the Knockouts champion. There was Deonna Purrazzo, who is now with AEW. But Deonna Purrazzo, she did outstanding work in TNA, and I mean outstanding. Some of the storytelling that they did with that Knockouts division, I didn't see that these WWE or AEW doing what TNA was doing, or Impact at the time, with their women's division. And women obviously deserve the same amount of respect that the men do. You know what I mean? They're out there doing the same exact thing that those guys are doing every single day. So TNA really shined light on that. So I always thought, Sasha Mercedes going to TNA would have been huge because your top guy wouldn't even have been a guy.
Yeah, right. And
that makes you different.
You're right. Truly, that would be a big deal. I mean, maybe even if they still pull that card, because they still have that chance.
Yeah, Sasha, although I will say I'm not sure what's going on AEW television right now, and just so everybody knows who's watching this, it's January 24th, 2024. AEW
could be happening as we speak, right?
I haven't checked Twitter, so I don't know, but I didn't receive any text messages or anything like that, so my thought process is that she did not show up on AEW television, so my guess is that she's going to return at the Royal Rumble.
So to wrap up that Nic Nemeth topic, what would you do if you were if your fantasy booking situation, all right? You're the booker. What do you do with Dolph Ziggler moving forward for the next year?
Place the belt on that man and let him go to every news outlet on every podcast and talk about TNA.
You're right. Okay. Yeah, look at you. Someone give this guy a job right now, because
let that man build your company up. He is a good face to have. Nic Nemeth, formerly known as Dolph Ziggler, talks about TNA Pro Wrestling. It's a headline in itself.
You're right. Because just imagine him just going all over the podcast circuit with the belt. Everybody's like, a lot of those people would just be like, what is TNA? And of course, there it is. The magic question.
Yep. And guess what?
I mean, it's kind of
instantly
like
people back hooked.
You don't see too much of that anymore, which is why that's such a great suggestion. I mean, really, it's funny. Just the other day, I looked over and on a morning show, I saw a New Day. I saw the New Day right there on the TV. I saw my homie. I was like, "Is that Kofi Kingston? Is it really? Is it really?"
Yeah.
And it totally was. I had to stare for a minute, but because it was him and Drew Barrymore. I'm like, this can't be real.
No.
But there it was. And the thing is, when you have wrestling in the mainstream outlets, that's when you really tap into a new audience. That's when you get that WWE massive appeal, is when you know how to get that mainstream wide appeal. And that's, I think, the thing again, that I think AEW just dips too deep into this thing where it's almost like when you make a movie for film nerds. Like you're making the movie for the people who really are into it, and you lose that massive audience of people who are just kind of the general audience who might.
That was the thing with AEW. Is AEW, they were never going to break the mold of being gaining a casual viewer. They don't
even want to.
They don't.
Exactly.
They appreciate the hardcore audience because the hardcore audience is put on for them. Now, is there some flaw to that? Absolutely. The hardcore audience are going to be the biggest ones to judge you too when things go wrong.
Yeah. Well, and that's a great point. That's such a great point, because if you're being sympathetic to that hardcore audience, like if you are one of those people, right? You are going to hold AEW to a higher standard because they are the ones they're the only ones that are doing that. And that's what their claim is. We're the only ones out here doing this on national television. And so, okay, if you're a hardcore wrestling fan, if you're into the indies, you're like, all right, let's see you do that then.
And then they don't, and then they get judged.
And then you see Ric Flair come out, and you're like, you motherfucker, we had a deal.
After just like a couple weeks bashing Vince McMahon about Ric Flair.
The Ric Flair move was truly, I think, a curveball. I don't think anybody could have predicted that one, because, I mean, honestly, maybe, but even with like his showing up in TNA, like again, history repeats itself. I don't think we could have predicted it then. I don't think we could have predicted it in another match. I never. If you would have asked me a year ago,
I'll stand by it. It's time for Rick to hang it up.
I know. You know what? The thing is, I want to believe that was his last match, but I really think
it's hard.
In 5 years.
It's hard.
Give me 5 years, dude.
It's tough. Let one other hot hooper star come out, and he's going to be like, yeah, I think I still... Hulk Hogan just said it. No. Hell no, I don't want to see Hulk Hogan on my TV.
Can you imagine?
Hulk Hogan teased being... He said, I think I got one more in me. Please. No.
So I haven't watched this match, but I hear that it's like the only one that broke that rule that I know of. And it's when Stone Cold came back to face Kevin Owens out of nowhere at WrestleMania.
That was when everybody was like, all right, we get it.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy, because when I heard that match happened, I was like, oh, it's got to be trash then. Like, there's no way.
Well, it's just they did it right. They did it right. They didn't make Stone Cold go out there and put on a 30-minute banger with Kevin Owens. No, they just fought in the crowd. It was a good match. It was fun. It was exhilarating. It got the crowd involved. He hit a stunner. He pinned Kevin Owens.
And that's what they get wrong with those matches, right?
That's
they
exactly.
Just they drag them out, and they don't even understand like what
Sting. Like, I'm sorry, Sting doesn't. Now this retirement run with Sting is amazing, and obviously Sting is an amazing pro wrestling. He's a great pro wrestler, but at the end of the day, Sting, right, he's up there in age. It's something that you have to understand, and it's something that needs to be said. Yes, he's up there in age, and now he's doing this retirement run thing. But at the end of the day, you know, AEW has kind of had him go out there and wrestle a little bit more than maybe Sting should have. That's a little bit of the issue.
Yeah, and what do? You have to wonder, like, I'm sure a lot of that has to be some of what Sting's wishes are.
Yep.
And,
you
know.
Yeah, Sting obviously wants to go out and do it. Yeah, Sting wants to go do it. That's 100% something. But yeah, I just think with those older guys, you know, it really takes, like, you have to know how you're going to do the match. And I think Stone Cold and Kevin Owens was a perfect example of how you take a retired superstar and put them in a match. I think that's the perfect way to do it.
Yeah, I think Ric Flair would tell you to just do the match how you did 50 years ago. Just do it the exact same way.
No, don't do that.
I think, like, the thing is, I think Jeff Hardy would tell you the same thing. I think Jeff Hardy would say, just go out and just jump off a ladder like you did 30 years ago. There's no difference.
Nope.
There's no difference.
There's not one. And
Can you imagine Edge now jumping off that ladder to spear somebody holding that tight? I can't imagine an Edge of this era. Like, I think that's something crazy about wrestling that I didn't really appreciate as a younger kid, is how extreme those extreme moments really are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
there is one other person doing it right now, and it's Sammy Guevara. Sammy Guevara, I think, is in AEW.
That casket spot, wasn't that him and somebody else in a match?
That was Darby Allin. So Darby Allin, he definitely exonerates it, but him, I can't believe I didn't mention Darby. But yes, Darby and Sammy Guevara, they like highlight extreme wrestling and like what they cross boundaries of crazy. I mean, that stuff's cool. I was never really big into the extreme stuff. Some people were. Some people found it exciting, and that's all right. You know what I mean? Like I can imagine.
My limit's Mick Foley. That's where it stops for me. It stops where you see like somebody getting thrown off a cage and thrown into like the center of a ring, and they're dying, and you're emotionally connected. That's where it stops.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think everybody should stop at Mick Foley.
Yeah, like if you're going any farther than Mick Foley with your hardcore, that's why John Moxley loses me a little bit when he goes a little too far.
He's a crazy son of a bitch.
Yeah, and I can appreciate him for being himself. But
yeah,
it's
absolutely,
dude.
John
Moxley's great.
I love John Moxley.
When you just go on a podcast and say, "Oh, I love to bleed," like, bro,
come on, something's going on.
Something's going on there. But I do love me some John Moxley too. As a matter of fact, like back in the day, I remember really diving deep into him before he even got his moment. Like, I remember finding him when he was only in the indies and just seeing his hardcore matches and being like, "Whoa, who is this guy?"
Yeah, he wrestled in like maybe not GCW. I forget the exact name of some of the companies, but he had wrestled Nick Gage and put on the death matches and stuff like that. And those are obviously what kind of drew him into that kind of style of wrestling. Was the Nick Gage death matches where they would hit each other with the light bulbs and stuff like that, which that shit's insane to me, and it's crazy. But at the end of the day, that was just his style of pro wrestling that he enjoyed, and that's what he liked.
Yeah, I'm very torn on it because part of me is like, you know, there's the caveman in me that's like, yeah, smash the light bulb over his head. Do it. You know, I want to see.
People, but for me, I can't. Don't do that. I don't want to see that.
Well, that's what I say. I'm torn because then the other part of me is like, no, like what in the world are you doing?
Yeah, it's funny, dude. It's funny.
And as soon as you need barbed wire constantly, but that's the thing. That's why I'm kind of. Why I say the Mick Foley thing is that I think even the culture has changed. Like back in the day when you did hardcore, I think ECW kind of shifted things in a big way.
They did.
And then afterwards, nothing was ever the same. And then you got a lot of people who can only think of hardcore as like ECW or even more hardcore than that.
Yeah,
and
because there is things that get more hardcore than that.
Yes, and I mean, WWE kind of contributed to it a little bit. I guess what? When I say Mick Foley, even then, like, that's a bit much because I like kind of tense up when I see somebody get thrown on a bed of nails. When I see something like that happening, that's a lot for me. And that's kind of a regular happening in the WWE. That still goes on. Mm-hmm. You can still lay down a bed of nails and drop inside of it. And to me, that's like, that's brutal.
So in WWE,
that's
it's kind of
hardcore.
stopped. It's kind of stopped in WWE. That part of wrestling in WWE has stopped because they went away from the TV 14. Which,
I don't know. I feel like it's happened in the last at least 10 years or so. Somebody's fallen on some glass or nails.
Actually, I think you're right. I think Chris Jericho and Dean Ambrose, actually, John Moxley, in a steel cage match. Yeah, I want to say it was a steel cage match in like 2015 or 16. I forget. I hope somebody sees this and comments on it and can be exactly sure. But yeah, no, you're right. It did happen, I want to say, once within the last 10 years.
But it is rare nowadays.
It is.
The point being, though, that like the standard is truly, I guess, yeah, that really is where it was back then. And nowadays, where you have the hardcore scene, it's just kind of, to me, it's become a bit too intense. The people who want hardcore, it's like that. I tried to watch that I tried to watch that John Moxley versus Kenny Omega match, where it's like it's supposedly a 5-star match to a lot of people. And I'm like, bro, this is just brutal.
Yeah.
I mean, you are kind of watching people just torture each other for a good 20 minutes.
Those two just beat the shit out of each other. They beat the shit out of each other. Yeah.
That was not a fake match. No. They're beating the shit out of each other.
They beat the shit out of each other. Yeah, you imagine having to go out there and build yourself up to be like, hey, yeah, I know we're friends back here, but I'm really going to have to go out there and beat the shit out of you after this.
Because what people don't understand is they're thinking, as we say this, they're thinking, oh, I know what they're talking about, but wrestling is fake. No, I'm talking, these people, their version of wrestling is they want to go out and actually smash things over the other guy's head.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
they
insane.
really want to.
It's insane.
And they want things smashed over their head. And they want to have glass cut them, and they want to be thrown on the barbed wire, and they don't want it to be fake. They get mad if you tell them they have to fake it. Like they want it to be real.
Yeah.
So to me, that's where it gets to be a little bit crazy. And at the same time, it's like, I don't know. Somehow Jon Moxley makes it kind of cool.
Yeah, he is. He's a really cool guy. When you think about it, he's just badass. He's cool.
At the end of the day, I can't even deny it.
Nope.
So the last question I have for you today, I'll just give you a big one here.
All right.
And this is kind of a good one to send the people home with, too, because it'll give them some homework.
All right.
What are some of your favorite matches of all time? Like, if you were to watch some matches right now, what are some matches that you'd pull up? Like, if you learned out you were going to die tomorrow, what are the last WWE matches you ever want to see? That's a good way to put it.
So my number one...
I shouldn't even say WWE. It could be anything.
Okay.
Any company,
All
anywhere.
right. So my number one would be CM Punk versus John Cena at Money in the Bank in 2011. That match just ushered an era of pro wrestling that not many people knew they were ready for. So CM Punk versus John Cena for the WWE Championship in 2011. That would be my number one match. Another good match would be something that we talked about a little bit earlier. I think it might have been off camera, but Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker, WrestleMania 25.
Yes.
Kurt Angle, Shawn Michaels, WrestleMania 21. Kurt Angle and Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 21 might be my number one, just pro wrestling wise. Was one of the greatest matches I've ever seen. Also, Kenny Omega and Will Ospreay. Any Kenny Omega Will Ospreay match, go watch it. You want to watch good pro wrestling? Go watch Kenny Omega and Will Ospreay. And I want to say those would be my big matches that everybody should go watch. And I really stand on Kurt Angle and Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 21.
I think Dave Meltzer would have to disagree with you on that one. No 5-star matches for the good old Kurt Angle.
Which is
from that guy.
insane.
Yeah.
But it just goes to show that a star rating shouldn't matter.
I agree. If there's anything I want to send the people home with, it is don't listen to Dave Meltzer, folks.
Oh, man.
I'm kidding. Dave, come on the podcast. I'll talk with you. We'll have a great time. I do want to say, did you see the podcast he did recently with, what's his name? He does a whole bunch of wrestling podcasts now. He used to interview celebrities.
Yeah, Dave Meltzer does the Wrestling Observer.
Chris Van Vliet. I'm thinking of Chris Van Vliet, though.
Oh,
he
you're
did a
thinking
podcast
CVV?
with, he did a podcast with, dude, I just said his name. And I got a memory of a goldfish. I just said his name. I got 3 names going on in my head. What's his name? I'm going off 2 hours of sleep. Help me out here.
Are we talking? So recently he did one with Patrick Clark, who was formerly known as...
No. The guy I just mentioned. Dave
Meltzer?
Dave Meltzer. He did a podcast with Dave Meltzer, Chris Van Vliet, and the whole thing was... He kind of went in on him about the 5-star rating. Like So there's been a lot. Did you see this clip?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, the whole rating system. Wrestling is number one. It is subjective. I don't have to like what you like, right? So for somebody to go out and say, I'm giving this a 5-star, that's just his opinion. At the end of the day, it's just become a very respected opinion. If that makes sense.
Yeah, of course. That's kind of the mistake of it all, is that you have people who are for some reason saying, and really nowadays we're kind of not really, we're seeing people turn on it, but back in the 2010s, it was a big deal. People really took that seriously.
Yeah, because guys like AJ Styles and Samoa Joe, they were getting 5-star ratings. So WWE, up until, I forget what year it was, but didn't have like a 5-star rated match.
Yeah, which is wild to think about. I mean, of course, there's the statistic now that there's more 5-star matches in the past year of AEW than the entire...
AEW has put on some 5-star wrestling matches. There is no denying that. And I think that people, when they think of AEW, they need to think about pro wrestling, because that's exactly what it was. I'll tell you what WWE has been 5-star at. It's storytelling.
Well, okay, but could you possibly, because this is what he was getting in on him on the thing was. So do you think it's justifiable then to say that AEW truly had that high quality tier of wrestling? Like compare it to late night. Really? You really think so?
Yeah.
Because like I haven't, again, I'm getting back into everything, and I've kind of gotten a sour taste on AEW.
That's just because, and I'm here to tell you, it's because of the audience and what the audience has said about AEW. Yeah, no, AEW has some of the best pro wrestling matches I've ever seen. Modern day, best pro wrestling. Like I said, Will Ospreay, Kenny Omega, go watch their match at, I want to say, I'd have to look it up. Maybe I'll tell you off stream. But yes, there was a match between Kenny Omega and Will Ospreay in AEW, and it was the best pro wrestling match that I stand by, probably besides the Kurt Angle and Shawn Michaels, because in my opinion, that really is my favorite match of all time. But Will Ospreay and Kenny Omega put on probably what is the best pro wrestling match to this day.
Okay. Wow. And then I guess to wrap it up too, any other matches you would recommend from AEW that I should check out?
Trying to think.
Obviously,
the MJF CM Punk feud, that was outstanding. That whole feud itself, obviously, maybe go back and watch that. Cody Rhodes and Brody Lee was in AEW, and that feud was outstanding. The Dark Order and Cody Rhodes. Trying to think of some more stuff here. Hangman Page put on some really good matches. That whole thing with CM Punk, that was even good at the time. Chris Jericho. Eddie Kingston, Jon Moxley.
Yeah, Eddie Kingston, he's caught my attention quite a bit.
Yes, Eddie Kingston and Jon Moxley. That's just good storytelling, but also great pro wrestling.
Okay.
Bryan Danielson, Kenny Omega at Grand Slam. And I want to say 2021 or 22. I can't remember the year. But that was insane. Absolutely. That match is definitely a must-see. So the AEW has a lot of stuff that you can go back. And those are just the ones that I can think of off the top of my head.
All right, man. All right. And with all of that being said, it was a pleasure having you on today. Can you tell the people all the places they can find you if they're looking for you?
Yes. You can
go for it.
All right. Didn't want to cut you off. You guys can find me.
Oh, no. Cut me off as much as you need.
So look, you can find me on YouTube at BillyTKO. You can also go follow me on all my social media at BillyTKO. On Instagram, it's BillyDTKO. So there is that one little difference. And on Twitter, it is BillyDTKO. But everywhere else, it is BillyTKO. So just understand that those two platforms has a D in them.
All right. And thank you again for coming on, man. Really, it was a pleasure talking with you. I do want to do this again sometime.
Absolutely.
I'm going to try to get deeper and deeper into the modern wrestling. Because the thing is, now that Raw is going to be heading to, or WWE is heading to Netflix, that actually is going to make it easier for me to watch.
Yeah, it's going to make it easier for many people, and we'll dive into that maybe on the next one.
Yes. And so there's that whole thing. And I just like, if we keep in touch, you could help me keep tabs of all this. I could send you my questions. And you could be like, oh, this is, I'll be like, why does everybody hate this guy so much? And you'll be like, oh, it's because this thing happened back in 2016.
Like I said, we have each other now. We obviously have each other's contact information. So, obviously at any time, feel free to reach out. And I'm down to do this whenever, man. I believe we've brewed a really good friendship out of this.
I really think so. And I hope that the people at home watching this, I hope that they can connect with that beautiful thing that is the world of professional wrestling, because that's what brought me to you today. I think that there really is a culture within it that is, there's something that we all know and love within that world that we can all connect with. There's something with the characters, there's something with the matches, there's something with the storytelling that's so real, that's so in touch with the human spirit, and that's why I love wrestling. And I know that's why you love wrestling. I know that's why we all love wrestling. And I hope that we can just all go watch let's all do our homework. Let's go watch a freaking 5-star match after this today. All right, and just think about how great. Yeah. All right. But yeah, man, thank you for coming on.
Thank you, man,
we'll do
for
this again.
me.
And I usually do this at the end, so I'm just letting you know, here it comes. camera, clocking out, folks.
I see it all from the watchtower. How I got powers, more than ever. Time flows like a hot shower, like a whole world and only one truth, like a whole life.